Hey guys, welcome to a deep dive with airing your dirty laundry. I'm Daphne Berry and I have my period. I was meant to start recording this episode like 2 hours ago and I have been lying on my bed feeling like absolute dog balls for a while now. And look, I just thought I'd let you know where I'm at. So if anything rogue comes up today, you know why. And if you're thinking TMI, I don't need to know about your period. Well, sorry, I'm just somebody who likes to talk about when I bleed. Also, I thought I should introduce what we're doing today. So we're going to do a deep dive on Tame Impala's currents today, which if you know Tame Impala, you haven't been living under a rock for a really long time. Kevin Parker is the mastermind behind Tame Impala. They've been around since 2008. So they've been around for a while, since I was in year 11 at high school, wagging class, going to the beach, not really doing what I was meant to be doing and listening to a lot of music. Now, particularly if you're Australian, you've definitely heard of Tame Impala before. You've seen them live, you've been to festivals. I've had the privilege of seeing them at Laneway, back when it used to be at the art school. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but when it was at the art school, I feel like that's when Laneway was in its fucking prime. You used to like kind of go around through the school, through these little alleyways, different stages were all like situated around the school, and it was just a really cool fucking time. And I remember I saw Tame Impala there. It was actually the festival that I first fell in love with Mac DeMarco as well. I'd never heard of Mac DeMarco before the time I saw him at Laneway, and it blew my fucking mind. I remember him coming out with like cigarettes in his mouth, and he had like people coming on stage in like gold little Speedos, and the music didn't match the energy that Mac DeMarco was giving off, if that makes sense. Like it was something that I'd never seen before. And so Laneway was really this place that introduced me to a lot of really cool music. And it was the first time that I ever saw Tame Impala perform. So I'm really, really excited to be doing this deep dive with you today on Tame Impala, especially because also Kevin Parker just won his first Grammy. Can we just like for a second? Yes, Kevin Parker. Okay. Anyway, let's get into today's deep dive. So Tame Impala, 10 years of currents. It has been 10 years since this album was released, which is absolutely fucking wild, you guys. And I'm sorry I'm swearing a lot today, but as I said, I have my period and I feel like I'm allowed to swear if I want to. So 10 years of Tame Impala currents. Before Currents, we should acknowledge that there were two albums, of course, Innerspeaker and Lonerism. But Currents was this album that sort of like kind of what's the word? Like redefined Tame's sound in a way. Like there was a lot of pop influences on this album, whereas before it was a lot of psychedelic influences. Before we get into that album though, I'd really like to just take you back to the start of Tame Impala and kind of give like a little regroup on who Kevin is, on how he started, and honestly answer the age-old question of, is it just Kevin Parker or is Tame Impala a band? Because there's a lot of discourse around this, of course, and I want to get to the bottom of it for you guys, because I posted a video about Tame Impala. I posted a post on Instagram saying like, congratulations to Kevin Parker winning his first Grammy, and somebody was in the comments like, congratulations to the rest of the band. And yes, congratulations to the rest of the band, of course, but it should be noted that it's particularly like on Currents. Let's just talk about Currents for a second because that's what this episode is about. Kevin Parker wrote, produced, recorded, and performed this entire album out of his house in Fremantle in Western Australia. So yes, Tame Impala have other musicians that get on stage with them, and I will get into that for a second. But when we talk about Tame Impala and when I talk about Kevin Parker, I'm not disregarding those musicians, but they're not exactly part of like the writing and the creative process. They are for like live performances and things like that, but not so much when we're in the creative performance of the world. And so I think that that's something to just explain to you off the bat, so you don't think that I'm just ignoring other musicians and that people should be spoken about, because they will be spoken about, which I'm going to do now. So I'll stop rambling. I'm sorry. Okay. So Tame Impala, it all started with a chance meeting at a swing band rehearsal and a mysterious gig hosted by this character named Tanya. So two musicians were at this party, Kevin Parker and Luke Epstein. They became friends and they started a band called the Dee Dums. This band would later become the basis of Tame Impala. But it's really important for us to talk about the Dee Dums before we get into the Tame Impala kind of element. And I would really highly recommend going to SoundCloud and listening to the Dee Dums. You can really hear the origin of Tame Impala on these tracks. There's like a Beatles, Jimi Hendrix sort of sound coming through. And there's one song where you can really clearly hear the Tame song Half Glass Full of Wine. And this song was released on an EP. There were 6 tracks on this EP. It was a self-titled EP as far as I can remember. And the song Half Glass Full of Wine, if you go listen to that, you could even pause this episode right now. go listen to Half Glass Full of Wine by Tame Impala. And then if you go to SoundCloud and go to DD Dums, You Haven't Been Telling the Truth, or even YouTube, type in DD Dums, You Haven't Been Telling the Truth, Tame Impala, Half Glass Full of Wine. You can hear exactly where this sound has come from, pre-Tame Impala even becoming a band. So you can pause the video or do that afterwards, do what you want. I'm not your mum, but it's really, really interesting. And Half Glass Full of Wine, it actually reached number 75 in the Hottest 100 in 2008. So it's really cool that before Tame Impala was even a band, the sound was there and it existed in this other space. The 6 songs on that self-titled EP, including Half Glass Full of Wine, were selected from a list of approximately 20 songs that Kevin Parker had recorded as far back as 2003. And speaking about the release of this EP, Parker said that most of the songs on the EP were never meant to be heard by the rest of Perth, let alone the rest of the world. They were just recorded for my own listening sake, and I burned a CD of it and I put it in my car and I gave it to my friends. And he also revealed that the EP was not in any way recorded for an EP. The songs were on there weren't really recorded at the same time. They were done over a bunch of years and, like I said, weren't meant to be heard like by Perth, let alone the rest of the world. Back to DD Dums. Luke Epstein, who was like the co-founder of this band, actually left DD Dums 3 years later to play for another Perth-based band called Sugarpuss. His departure made way for a certain DD Dums superfan by the name of Jay Watson, who then joined DD Dums. Jay Watson, now we have to talk about him for a second. He still today tours with Tame Impala. He plays keys for Tame Impala and is a member of the Australian psychedelic rock band Pond. So I'm sure you've probably heard of Pond before if you're from Australia. He plays drums, bass, guitar, keys, and synth, and also produces and mixes the band's music, Pond's music, not Tame Impala. He also has his own solo project called Gum, which is really cool. So if you're wanting to find some new music, if you haven't heard of these bands before, Pond and Gum, they are Jay Watson from Tame Impala these are his other projects, his projects that he works on. And so then we get to 2007, where Tame Impala have emerged as a homegrown recording project created by Kevin Parker, who posted a number of tracks on MySpace. This generated interest from a number of labels, and eventually he signed a worldwide deal with the independent Modular Recordings in July 2008. The EP is then followed by their first album, Innerspeaker, which comes out in 2010. So Innerspeaker won Album of the Year at the Rolling Stone Awards in Australia for 2010, and Triple J also gave it the J Award for Album of the Year. Innerspeaker has also gone platinum in Australia and gold in the UK. So already off the bat with the first album, we're seeing something really special happening, and it's like people around the world are paying attention, and it's already winning awards. In 2012, Parker releases their second album, Lonerism, which I think could possibly be my favorite Tame Impala album. Although when doing a lot of research for this episode, I'm really conflicted because Currents is like, they're just so different from each other. But Lonerism is, they're all bangers. It's really impossible to choose. But Kevin Parker had this quote to make after the release of Innerspeaker, which is their first album. He says, "I started writing songs straight after Innerspeaker, but I told myself I wouldn't get hung up with the pressure, so I kind of pretended they were for some other weird project that wasn't going to have much of a consequence." So Lonerism actually won a bunch of awards. It won for Album of the Year at the J Awards, Best Song at the EG Music Awards for Elephant, Album of the Year at the Rolling Stone Awards in Australia. It won Song of the Year for Feels Like We Only Go Backwards at the APRA Awards. And it also took home its first 3 ARIAs. He got Album of the Year, Best Rock Album, and Best Group. It was also nominated for a Grammy. So this sees Kevin Parker get nominated for his first ever Grammy for Lonerism for Best Alternative Music Album. So he's really shown his acceleration in the music industry, and international recognition of Tame Impala is quite clearly happening. It's all happening for Tame Impala. It's all happening for Kevin Parker. And yeah, it's just really, really cool, especially as an Australian. We don't see this happen a lot with many of our artists. I don't want to get political on it. I don't know why. We've got so much talent here. I don't know how we're meant to break through the noise, but when we do break through the noise with people like Tame Impala or Troye Sivan, Troy's just been nominated for a Grammy this year, you really just get that sense of like pride. Yeah, and it's just so cool that, I don't know, when I listen to Tame Impala, I'm like, it's so sick that this is someone from Australia, and we just get to like own that for once, just fucking own that. Oh, I also thought it would be just like a little quick note that I just thought about. Remember when remember when Kevin Parker got married? I don't know if you guys saw this, but he had McDonald's as the catering at his wedding. Anyway, go Google that if you haven't seen that. It's really funny. So it's 2012, Lonerism is released, and then we wait 3 years until we are given Currents on July 17, 2015, which of course is nearly 10 years ago, which is crazy to think about because I have such vivid memories of when Currents was released to the world. I remember I'd been broken up with my partner for like 2 or 3 years at this point. And I remember hearing Eventually for the first time, and it was like he was speaking to me like, eventually, eventually, ooh, So I remember the first time I heard that, and it's like the lyrics in that was so profound to me at the time. I was like, oh my God, this is all about like doing the right thing and it hurting at the time. But then, years down the line, it all makes sense and that you were doing things for the right reasons. And I remember hearing that song being like, this has been like written for me. And going back to Laneway, how I was telling you, I saw them at Laneway. I was so high and I was on my friend's shoulders and Tame Impala were playing in front and Eventually was playing. No, it wasn't Eventually. I'm lying to you. It was The Less I Know, the Better. And there's that line at the end of the song and it's like, go on Superman, say your stupid line. And I remember being on my friend's shoulders and I was just like, go on Superman, say your stupid line. And I was just like, it was like the most therapeutic, most amazing thing in the entire world. I feel like it was more than therapy could have ever done for me. And that's the power of music. And I'll preach that until the day I die, until I'm 10 foot in the ground, that music can fucking heal you. And it did. And I remember coming out of that being like, oh my God, I just let go of like all this stuff that I'd been holding on to. And yeah, that's the power of Tame Impala and that's the power of music. And so this album, Currents, I think also for anybody who's been like through a breakup before in their life, this is the breakup album for me anyway, even though I had been broken up for 3 years, that really just like made so much sense in my brain. And it felt like something had been put down into words, into place that I had never really been able to like, I don't know, hear before. When people always ask me, sometimes people will ask me like, what's your breakup album? Like, what is the album that you think about? It's Currents for me. And I don't know if you guys agree, but it's a fucking, yeah. So Currents is released in 2015 and this album is solidifying Tame Impala as a band that's going to be remembered for a really, really, really long time. In an interview from 9 years ago when Let It Happen, which, fun fact for anybody listening to Let It Happen, there's a moment in the song where it skips. So at 3 minutes 49, the record feel like it's gotten stuck on this loop. And a fun fact, when Parker was recording Let It Happen in the studio, this was actually a mistake. And he just kept it on the album because he thought it sounded really cool. Yeah, so that's a fun fact. 3 minutes 49, if you want to go and listen to that. That was a mistake on The Less I Know, the Better. Oh, it also says here in my notes, he decided to keep it because it fit the song's theme of surrendering to change. So I think that's really beautiful and really cool, and that like mistakes can happen, but sometimes for the right reasons. And like sometimes I seriously feel like sometimes mistakes happen because they're meant to happen. I don't know, like it's like fate. I don't know if I believe in fate, but sometimes I'm like, damn, yeah. Anyway. Let It Happen has been released and we still didn't have the full Currents record. Parker said that he really enjoyed bringing together different things that he loved. He enjoys when it affects you weirdly and it sounds like something has been broken a bit. It makes you feel a little bit upside down. He knew what psychedelic music sounded like to his brain, and so on this album he was playing around trying to make something that he could maybe be played more as a dance club track and maybe more in a communal setting for people to listen to when they're having a bit of a party or whatever, rather than it to be more of like a solo listen that the first prior two albums maybe felt more like. He talks in an interview on how he still didn't know when the album was going to be released, and when the album was due to come out in May, it actually had to be delayed until July because he still wasn't ready for it to be released to the world. And Kevin Parker's a perfectionist, and I don't know if I've touched on this enough. He was in his house in Fremantle in Western Australia and recorded, wrote, produced, performed this entire thing all on his own. It's absolutely amazing, and it really goes to show like I would love to jump inside his brain and be like, what is in there, like what's going on in there that's that I can like tap into for a second or understand, because amazing, like there's not many artists that are able to accomplish something like that. When working on Currents, it said that Kevin Parker basically shut himself up in his place in Fremantle and worked on this album every single day. He says that Fleetwood Mac was an early inspiration. There's actually a video on YouTube that you can go and watch where you can see Kevin Parker actually working on the recording process of this album in his house. And if you haven't seen that video, it's really interesting to watch, and it's a step back in time, and it's amazing that this is just literally how he would spend his days in and out. And so fucking cool, man. He took it as a challenge not to fill his music with layers and layers of sound on this record, but instead let the music breathe. He was so inspired by pop music on this album, and it's also said that growing up he felt as though he couldn't listen to pop music around his friends because he was worried that they would find him lame and perhaps like poke a bit of fun at him. So pop music really became just like this guilty pleasure for him. And for a long time he was under the impression as well that pop artists were sort of like fake and kind of rude and mean, and maybe just like in it for the money. And then he started to notice that the opposite can actually be true when he was immersed more so into the industry. And speaking and working with more pop artists, he actually found that the opposite was true. And there's this story as well, apparently, where he was driving at night through LA and he was high on mushies, and the song Staying Alive by the Bee Gees came on. And he had heard this song so many times in his life, and then suddenly he hears it like completely differently, obviously because he's tripping, he's high as fuck, but he's realizing how powerful pop music can be. And then this belief that he took from this like tripping experience with the mushies expanded when he recorded 3 songs on Mark Ronson's album Uptown Special, which was in 2014 they wrote or created, and then in 2015 it was released to the world, Uptown Special. Parker found himself in a professional recording studio, which at this time was still a bit of a novelty for him. He began to realize just how hard it is to write pop music and gain heaps more respect for the genre that he didn't listen to as much in his youth. The experience gave him the permission he needed to embrace pop music for the record Currents. Now let's talk a little bit about the theme and the like concept for the album Currents. So it was inspired by his relationship that he had with this woman called Melody Prochet. The two met in Paris in 2011 after a Tame Impala show. Kevin then went on to produce her self-titled album Melody's Echo Chamber in 2012, but the pair actually ended up drifting apart in 2014 and Parker came home to Australia. And if you have been listening to what I've been saying, 2014 is the year before Currents is released, and it's said that Currents was started recording early 2014. So you can kind of put 2 and 2 together. You listen to the album and the themes and the lyrics on this, and it's like, it's a breakup album. So it's obviously probably about Melody. This record is about the process of personal transformation, which many critics interpret to be the result of a romantic breakup, especially when you listen to tracks like Eventually, Yes, I'm Changing, which quite literally address the growth of like personal growth and evolution. He then became obsessed with recording and basically worked every single day by himself, starting at around 12 p.m. and going late into the evening while smoking and having a few drinks, which would help him get into his flow. When he'd have writer's block, he would go out into the ocean, which was right outside his house, and have a little bit of a swim. But it's also really important to note that he didn't fully rely on like drugs and alcohol to do things. And some of his ideas, his best ideas actually came when he was completely sober. The one thing Kevin Parker cannot escape, though, is his perfectionism. He is an absolute perfectionist, and there is one song on this album that had over 1,000 vocal takes. And then this also goes back to like the album being delayed on the release, and it's because of this perfectionism that he just wasn't ready for it to be heard yet. It wasn't quite there. On the one hand, his perfectionism helps him make decisions, but on the other hand, it causes him to have a bit of a nervous breakdown during the recording, and he's kind of wondering how on earth he's meant to be able to finish this thing in time. So his first 2 records are much more based in like rock and psychedelia, whereas this album has over 80 synths on it, and if you listen to it, it's synth covered. Like if you were to hop into a bed and put a doona on top of you made of synths, that's what Currents is, okay? It's also got over 70 style drums with traces of 90s R&B sprinkled throughout. It's as much of a product of his newfound love for pop music as it was born out of necessity. And I think by necessity, that means like he needed to write this album for himself, for what he's going through, you know, in his personal life. So Parker actually starts writing a lot of these songs while he's on the road and touring. And sometimes when he wouldn't like have access to all of his gear, it'd force him to write more of the music on his synths that he did have access to, perhaps on the tour bus and things like that. And there are guitars on the album, but they sort of take a back seat on this record. And the name for the record, Currents, came from the abandoned Coogee power station in Fremantle in Western Australia. He found inspiration and creative energy from its monolithic stillness. During the recording, he would often visit the site for inspiration for lyrics or sit next down to it to perhaps just like clear his mind. Even though he thought of the title Currents early on in the recording process, it wasn't until he made the connection that the power station is where electricity comes from that he was sure about the album's title. I also was thinking about it listening to this album while doing the research for this episode. That isn't it just like amazing how when you listen to music that really fuels you, you feel like you're filled with electricity at the same time as well. So I don't know if that was his intention, but you're getting that electric feeling. And so yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think it's such a fitting, beautiful title for this album. Currents debuted in the top 10 for the first time in the UK and in the US. And at the 2015 ARIA Music Awards, Currents was awarded Best Rock Album and Album of the Year, and it also received nominations for the Grammy Awards Best Alternative Music Album. It won the J Award for Australian Album of the Year. It was listed at number 12 in Rolling Stone Australia's list of the 200 greatest albums of all time. And in 2020, Rolling Stone ranked Currents 382nd on the greatest 500 albums of all time. So let's do a little breakdown of all the tracks. If you were following us on Instagram, you would have seen that I post a little story saying listen to the album because it's going to make this episode sicker for you. So here's why it's going to make it sicker, because I'm going to break down the tracks and I'm going to tell you a little bit about them in chronological order. Starting off with The Less I Know, The Better. I just told you before, at 3 minutes and 49 seconds, you can hear that the record has gotten stuck, and this was a mistake, an accidental mistake, but he left it on the track. And we come to this synth building with the stuck record on that loop, which is just really, really amazing. And then at 4 minutes 45, the drums come back in, and I feel like it's like you're being taken on this massive acid trip and you're kind of waiting for like this relief from it. Like you're like building, kind of like climaxing in a way. And then you kind of get your climax at 5 minutes and 6 seconds where you get that relief of sort of those synths letting go and those drums letting go. The track Nangs, apparently this track was written at the exact amount of time it takes for you to do a nang, feel the goodness of the nang, and come off of the nang. And if you don't know what nangs are, Google what a nang is. I can't tell you that actually. The Moment. Kevin Parker has said that The Moment is the song that he associates the most with the old Coogee Power Station. There are parts of that song that he listens to where he's right back there. The synth guitar breakdown was directly inspired by standing at its base, looking up at it. Yes, I'm Changing. So on Yes, I'm Changing, Kevin Parker sings straight from the heart about his very public breakup with Melody Prochet. The lyrics are perhaps so like a stream of consciousness that he actually doesn't remember writing them. And he says it's a weird experience because it was like somebody else made that song. I have no memory. I feel like I was imagining it. A lot of people on Reddit are also in agreement that lyrically, it's the best song Parker has ever written, eventually. So this is my favorite track on the album, I've already told you. It dissects the impending end of a relationship and difficulties in doing so, attempting to emphasize the latter part of the phrase short-term pain, long-term gain. And Kevin Parker actually said about Eventually, he said, I have to say though, there's a song on the new album called Eventually. It's still very moving for me to listen to, even after 9,506,025 I don't know this number, there's a written number down here that's huge, listens and mixes. So he's saying it's still really, really moving for him. And it's obviously a very special, powerful song for him to have written and shared with us all. So shortly after the release of Tame Impala's Eventually, there's this guy called Sam Cully, and he was in this 70s funk band called Skull Snaps, and he's accusing Kevin Parker of sampling drums from their new track A New Day, which is previously sampled by many hip-hop producers. And this guy Cully starts to like threaten to sue Kevin Parker. His email to Kevin Parker reads, on your song Eventually, you are using our drum sample from It's a New Day. You have not cleared this sample with us. Our musicologist says it's indeed our sample. If we don't hear from you in 3 days, we will file the necessary papers in court against you and the record company. Now, Kevin Parker then posts the email, and I'll put this on Instagram for you guys to have a look at. He puts it up on Instagram as a post, like screenshots the email, and then in his own caption he says, wow, unexpected compliment. The creator of the famous Skull Snaps drum sample thinks my drums is his actual sample and wants to sue me for not clearing it. Haha. Sam Cully, you have 3 days to fire your musicologist. Anyone who thinks this could be a hoax, though. Anyway, I did some digging and it wasn't a hoax, but I don't think that the case went very far. Track number 6 is Gossip, and it's only a 55-second instrumental, sort of like an interlude on the album, and it's got these dancing synths and beautiful guitars. And one user on Reddit kind of had this really cool theory about this song that I'd love to share with you. So he says, this isn't fully fleshed out, but here goes. The synth that dances around in the beginning and throughout the song represents gossiping voices. They are pleasant to the untrained ear. Gossip can be perceived as an entertainment and to be fun to listen to, but ultimately it's a really toxic way to live. The guitar solo in the back is fighting that. It slowly builds and takes over the song, being the last few sounds to play. I think this, the guitar, represents the realization of the said gossip and how toxic it can be. The guitar solo is also coming out of this toxicity that can take over people's lives, and eventually they stop, leaving to live a new life. A clean slate to build meaning from, to talk about ideas instead of people. This guitar solo also has different melodies that the repeating synth implies new ideas. So whether or not that's right, go and listen to Gossip and then like think about like, is the synth sort of like the gossipy sort of element, and then the guitars sort of taking over that and taking us away from the gossip and kind of giving us this clean slate and building meaning again in our lives. Track number 7, The Less I Know, The Better. It's got this really catchy bass line, and the lyrics feel like everybody can really relate to this song. It captures the emotion of jealousy and unrequited love especially well. Now, when I was watching and doing the research for this podcast, I was in the library and I was watching the music video for The Less I Know, The Better. And if you haven't gone and seen that music video, please go do so now. It's one of my favorite music videos of all time. And without giving too much away, it's basically like this girl is sex with a gorilla. I don't know how to explain it to you, but I was watching it in the library and this little old lady came up behind me and was like looking, and then I noticed that she had like a 5-year-old grandson, and I'm watching basically like gorilla porn. And she was like, looked at me and she's like, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I was like, honestly, fair enough. I'm in a public library space watching a gorilla do its thing with a woman, and it was not good. But it's an amazing music video, so go check out The Less I Know, The Better music video if you haven't already. If you can, maybe actually go pause this episode and go and watch the music video so that you can understand what I'm about to say a little bit better. So go pause, come back, and then we'll meet you in a second. Great. Okay, welcome back. So I was thinking about the reasoning why they made Trevor a gorilla in this music video, and I was thinking that maybe it's because like the boy in the music video is the protagonist, and the way he sees Trevor, he's like this animal who has stolen his girlfriend, and so he puts this image in his mind as like Trevor is like the gorilla. And perhaps it's also why we see her like having bananas in the pom-poms, because he's associating the two together, and so it's kind of like a metaphor in a way. That's my idea. If you have seen this music video, let me know what you think, why he is a gorilla. Maybe it was just Canada being like, let's make him a gorilla. It'll be really, really funny. And of course, it's got those iconic lines, which are just so heartbreaking. She was holding hands with Trevor. You should try your luck with Heather. When then I heard they slept together. The less I know, the better. And the last section of the lyrics on this song as well, when he says, I was doing fine without you till I saw your eyes turn away from mine. It's like, it's so heartbreaking whenever you've been in that sort of situation before. If you have been in that situation before where you're in love with somebody and then they've got eyes for somebody else, that's completely what The Less I Know, The Better is about. It's like, don't even tell me about it. I don't want to know about it. I'd rather just live in ignorance. And like I said at Laneway, when I saw this, go on Superman, say your stupid line. Fucking track number 8, Past Life. So the opening to this song, we get the synths coupled with this slow down recording of Kevin Parker's narration of the song. And he's like, and then I saw a lover from a past life. You know, I know you know. So if you go to YouTube, it's really just a fun fact. It's not like, you can actually type in past life sped up and you can hear Kevin Parker's just voice without it being slowed down and like made to sound sort of all warped and distorted. And it's just really funny. He's like, it was 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I was doing my washing and then I saw a lover from a past life. And it's just, I find it quite funny. Anyway, so that song obviously is just about seeing somebody that you used to have love with, you used to have this connection with, you built probably so much of your life with them, and then you see them out and you're like, from a past fucking life. Like, it's just so weird. Like, how weird is it when you break up with somebody and then all of a sudden you just don't see them anymore, and it's like that person was your best fucking friend and now you just don't see them anymore ever again. It's like the weirdest thing. It's like a death. It is like a past life. It's like that was like somebody else. I don't remember that time in my life. And yeah, the song Disciples, I see this song as an interlude for the album. So another interlude, as we already said that Gossip was an interlude as well. This song comes in at only 1 minute 48 seconds long, and it's the epitome of pop music. It's short, it's crisp. At the end, it leaves you wanting more of it. You play it like 3, 4, 5 more times. And the lyrics are so good that if you have experienced the same feelings as Kevin did when he fell out of touch with his childhood friends, you would totally relate to this song as well. It's like, you know, when you know someone and then they change and you're like, bro, what the hell? Like, you used to be cool, you used to have time for me, and now you've changed. That's sort of what this song is about. And that loss of a friendship. Track number 10, we come in with "Cause I'm a Man." I remember being so confused when this song came out because it obviously goes, "Cause I'm a man, woman." And I was like, what does that mean? I'm a man, woman. Like, must mean like it was like, I thought it was about him being like, I'm a man, woman. Like, I have feminine energy in me. I can feel all these things. I feel my feelings and my emotions in a way that perhaps a woman would. I'm a man, woman. It's not, grammar matters, guys. Grammar matters. It's not, I'm a man, woman. He's not talking about being a woman. He's talking about, I'm a man, comma, woman. I'm a man, woman. But he doesn't try and say it like that. But it kind of comes across as like that. When I was reading this, I was like, I'm a man, woman? Like, don't speak to me that way. But yeah, it's actually because I'm a man, woman. Don't always think before I do. Who knows a man that doesn't always think before he do? Anyway, it's a great track. Track number 11, Reality in Motion. There's like this egg shaker sound, and then 2 minutes 12 is my favorite part of this song. So go listen to 2 minutes and 12. But the synth is really slowed down here, and it's just a beautiful sound. The drums come in with the backing vocals in response to Kevin's vocals at the front of the song, singing the same lyrics repeatedly. And I think this song is about the anxiety of approaching someone you're interested in, letting your guard down and not overthinking it and just going with the flow. And then again in Let It Happen, the "all that's left to do" lyric is repeated through the track, and it's like it's gotten stuck on a loop again. And I wonder if he's like, I really liked how that worked in Let It Happen. Let's put it onto Reality in Motion. Not sure. And then our final track, of course, for the entire album is Love, Paranoia. And I think this is such a clever title because love and paranoia really do go hand in hand a lot of the time. And then it's got this beautiful part in the song that's, I've heard those words before. Are you sure it was nothing? 'Cause it made me feel like dying inside. Never thought I was insecure, but it's pure. Didn't notice until I was in love for real. I don't know if I needed to sing that all for you, but I've done it now. Anyway, I just think that's beautiful and so heartbreaking. And this track is everybody. This track is everything for somebody who's been in that situation before where you feel like you need to listen to your gut and maybe go and check somebody's messages on their phone, which I'm not condoning, but we've all been there before. And you know that there's just like something going on because you listen to your gut and also intuition, right? And then the narrative is flipped because he's like, suddenly I'm the phony one, the only one with the problem. And then at the end, he's like, girl, I'm sorry. And so maybe this paranoia is like he was really wrong with what he was thinking. He didn't need to be paranoid, but maybe it's like past relationships like gave him hurt. And so he's bringing that into this new relationship and it's harming it. And he's really sorry and it's fucking it up for him. And I'd also really like to apologize because I said that was the last track on the album, but it really wasn't the last track on the album. It's a 13-track album, and the last track is New Person, Same Old Mistakes. And Genius Lyrics gives us this insight on the final track of the record. On the final song of Currents, the narrator admits that his metamorphosis should be read with caution. Its biggest skeptic is the side of him he left behind. The impulse to change and the fear of changing too much are at odds until the bridge, which suggests some synthesis. This story ain't so different from the rest. Change and self-doubt are natural, and in the end, the narrator is in the same introspective person he was on Innerspeaker and Lonerism. It's a fitting conclusion to an album that both describes personal transformation and embodies it musically. As a radical departure from Kevin Parker's earlier work, both fans and artists are forced to reconcile the past with the present and the realization that one person can express different aspects of themselves at different times is as good as it gets. This song was also covered by Rihanna on her album Anti under the same title, Same Old Mistakes, and Rihanna's version only goes for 5 seconds longer, and it really stays true to the original, doesn't and does do it a lot of justice. I was about to say doesn't. It does do it a lot of justice. This song was also used in teasers for FX show created by Donald Glover, Atlanta, and Glover is known as the rapper Childish Gambino, obviously. At 3 minutes and 4 seconds on the song New Person, Same Old Mistakes, if you want to go and listen to this now, 3 minutes and 4 seconds, the song switches tones completely, which for me is the best part of the song. And I also think the shift in the tone is what Ginny's lyrics are talking about before when they said that change and self-doubt are natural, and in the end the narrator is the same introspective person he was on Innerspeaker and Lonerism, because at 3 minutes and 4 seconds when this track kind of goes into this different tone, it's sort of really similar to that psychedelic world that the first two albums gave us, and then he switches back into the same groove from the start of the song, and it's just an amazing closing track to the record. So yeah, Currents, Tame Impala. I really hope you enjoyed that. It actually went for a lot longer. I spoke for a lot longer than I thought I was going to, but it's been an absolute pleasure to do this one. Tame Impala go down in history, of course, as one of the best bands to ever come out of Australia, let alone the world. And I hope you enjoyed it very much. Please let me know who you would like me to do a deep dive on next, and what I might be missing. And I love you all very much. And congratulations, Kevin Parker, on your Grammy win. We love you so much. Love from Australia.